fitment to the chassis is second to nobody. So if you're an airplane and you're upside down, what's your takeoff mentality? On your mark, get set, go. What's going on, everybody? Today is a very interesting day. Today is the day that I'm going to install a cage that was not built by me, but we did have a hand in it. My friend Rob Parson over at Cagekits designed a roll cage using a 3D scan that we did of this old Datsun. Just do one of these with the camera. Oh. We took our 3D scanner made by Careerform, it's a handy scan. We targeted up the car and we scanned the whole chassis. We told them what points we wanted. We told them what the cage regulation had to be, which is a FIA Article 253 roll cage, which is specifically made for rally racing. This car is going to be shipped over to Africa where it's going to see a number of different rally courses. And the customer has been a customer of mine for a while. I've built several cages for him. He's even had the opportunity of rolling one of these cages that we did in a 2010 Mitsubishi Lancer, which I do have a video of. Maybe we'll throw it in there. And then all he did was message me back and say, thank you so much, your cage was great, I flipped it, I crashed. It was great. So not what you want to hear, but what you want to hear all at the same time. I'm just going to go over this car and kind of point out the really nice details about what the future holds for doing CNC laser cut, bent, engraved, and notched on these tubes. So like you'll see that the tubes are labeled with numbers. They've got circles for where the tubes need to land. And then just from the 3D scan that we made, and then from Rob sending me some of his proofs, we also have some pictures of what the cage is supposed to look like and how it's supposed to fit. And it's really great because we can just pull up the 3D scan and we can see where a tube may be passing through the chassis. And we can just say, okay, well, let's find the reference point of that. I could even print off a sheet of paper that lines up with some reference point on the chassis. And then I can just mark where the tube's going through, put it on the car, mark it with a marker, and blast a hole there for some of the tubes that have to go through, like the firewall and stuff. Follow me. We'll go over this from back to front, just kind of showing you what we're going to be doing and why this is going to be such an easy and brilliant install. We have little plates, all kinds of laser cut plates that were laser cut and bent by the guys over at Cagekits. So for the first example, we've got our rear tower plate. A part of this is going to need to be cut, but if you just take a little look inside, we have these two strut towers, which are factory reinforced, and we made these strut plates where he gave us the reference hole, which is the hole for where the top of the strut went. And you can see how perfectly it lines up if you just line up the hole. It gives you a great contact patch for welding. And it's just a super easy plate. Like normally you would have to cut and form this yourself. You'd have to put the plate on. Normally people would start with a plate that's just square and you kind of hammer it to fit or you bend it to fit. Right off the bat, it's a perfect fit. Threw the main hoop in there very loosely with the plates that were also CNC cut and bent. So the main hoop, fitment wise, is exactly what I would like to see anyways. It's touching the corners, it's right up against the roof, it's the perfect size and has the perfect amount of space to be able to weld it while giving you the maximum protection. And then the way the kit comes is generally just on a skid, and you'll see the tubes are all pre-notched and they have engraving on them for the number, which basically if you had when they mass produced the cage kit, they'll have a legend that'll show you basically where all of these tubes need to go. Another point would be, you can see on here that there's an engraved tube position here. So I said that we put this in loosely. I meant that. This main hoop is actually backwards. So this would be one of the door bars, and this would be the other door bar, if you can see that on the camera. So it tells you exactly where it wants you to put the tube, which is really important because for a cage that's cut to size and a cage that fits between front strut towers and rear strut towers, there's really zero room for error. Because if you put one tube too low, that's going to change its distance, and that's going to make everything not fit when you go to tie in the front to the back. So partly it's complicated, but then doing things like this makes it extremely user-friendly for just about anybody. Your intellectual ability does need to be somewhat high still, but for somebody that's built a cage or seen a cage built, this is going to be really easy, and the fitment really can't be beat unless you spend a ton of time on the cage like we usually do when we do them. So this is the best alternative. Going into the front, you'll see we have tubes that are going to be passing through the firewall, and they're going to be landing on these strut tower brace plates that also act as the 8th point of the cage. On this FIA cage, you have 8 points of contact, 2 in the rear strut towers, 2 on the main hoop, 2 on the front half laterals, and then 2 on the struts up here. So this simply gets installed there. If you wanted to secure it down, you could pop 3 bolts in there with nuts, tighten it down, and then weld this entire plate on. This is going to double as a strut tower reinforcement, which is a big deal for rally cars because their struts often blow the tops off of these cars. And it's going to be our landing point for the cage. That's a really quick summary. I mean, obviously we're going to see a lot of details when we're putting the cage together, but those are the benefits. That's how cool this is. All the material is the highest grade mild steel that you can get. So I believe it's a 1026 series, which when you're buying like DOM material, you're dealing with right around a 1018 to a 1026. This is the grade of the steel. All of these have etched on the side 1026, so you're also getting the best steel when you buy this kit. You're not getting any kind of mid-grade stuff. So the other benefit is DOM material usually comes with a thick oil coating. This is, I'm assuming, mechanical tubing or like hydraulic tubing, which comes really clean, like a cold rolled finish. So there's like zero prep work when it comes to cleaning the tube before welding as well. So all of these things just add up to saving a ton of time. And then the affordability of it is unbeatable. Even if you were a shop, to buy this cage kit and then to install it for somebody would arguably leave you within the same profit margins. You still need to be a skilled welder and a skilled fitter, but just the amount of time, like you could probably do 5 cages in a week rather than 1 cage in a week. So all of that, you're gonna see how it goes together right here. And it's gonna take a lot less time than the 350Z cage that I did. But the quality is gonna be right around the same, which is what we're going for. So we're gonna start fitting it up. So the first order of business is we've got to get the base plates in approximately where they need to go. Now, obviously we know that these go right in this corner. We know that the strut towers go on the strut towers, and we know that the fronts go right on the towers as well. What we don't know is where these boxes go. So what we're going to do is determine where the boxes go using the CNC cut tubing that's provided. So we're going to locate the main hoop using the backstays. Then we're going to set the door bar in roughly on the scribed lines. That's going to tell us exactly where the front box needs to go. And we'll tack everything in place and start throwing some tubes into the car. Somebody did a patch job in this car and it's atrocious. It was not us. Big bubble weld right there, keeping it from sitting flat.
So what do we have to do?
We gotta grind the bubble weld. Just a very light tack and whack. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. What's up with everyone eating freezies? So we've got 6 out of 8 base plates tacked in place. We have the 6 that we know are constrained by some part of the body. So there's no other place that it could go. The only 2 boxes or plates left that we have to put in are the front half lateral or A-pillar boxes. That's because there's no reference point, so it could go 4 inches forward or back. So now we're gonna start with the main hoop, add in the backstays, start tacking some stuff together, and seeing where everything lands so that we can determine where those boxes need to go. Using my better judgment and saying that these are probably the backstays. Like I said, normally these would be labeled with a part of his cage, but since this is the first cage for this chassis, it just says, oh, you know what? It probably is 510 1018. So I'm sure on his data sheet for when this cage is mass produced, it will say backstays left is 510-1017. Backstay right is this. We don't have that sheet, but we don't need that sheet. Bring out the pet mantis to take out this dragonfly.
Inside.
There he is.
Oh, he's walking out? Where's he? Oh my god.
He's here, he's landed.
You see him?
Yeah, come over here.
He's inside.
He's 4 inches wide.
Don't kill him. Try and get the shaft in the pipe. Get the shaft in the pipe and take him outside. Up.
So if you're an airplane and you're upside down, what's your takeoff mentality? Because if he flaps, he goes down for sure.
I think he just drop and glide, no?
He's not gliding anywhere.
If I was that fella, I'd be gliding. Everywhere.
He's a big unit. Bigger than my unit.
Nice coat, bro.
Oh, it's pretty sick. When you really get into it, you're putting the tube right where it needs to go because he's got it engraved on it where to put it. But then width-wise, you could be a 16th off, and height-wise, you could be a 16th off, which is gonna throw off the exact distance from where this, yeah, we'll figure it out. So Jack, I was calling you over to say that these are what make the cage kits worth it. Now, I'm not saying I couldn't have done this myself, but it would have taken a lot of time, a lot of thought, possibly a trial tube before the actual tube, but you gotta take a look at this. From start to finish, the fitment to the chassis is second to nobody. Yep. If you wanted to, give her a little bit of pressure and you could fully weld this entire A-pillar. This is what we go for. This is the bar. He is at the bar or he's over the bar. Yeah, I like it a lot. we're making good progress. I gotta go get a birthday cake for my daughter. It's her birthday, so I gotta go. We'll pick back up first thing in the morning. We should do it in the morning because it's cold. It's cooler. So our course of action today is to get all of the roof bars in place so that we're able to drop the cage, weld everything up top, put it back, and then we can continue on connecting the front strut towers, adding the door bars, doing the harness bar and the cross and all that good stuff. So because the cage is so cool, give me 5 minutes, we'll be welding her up. Wow, this guy's good. This guy's real good. Real good. Super close details. At first you might think this notch is messed up or something, but when you look carefully you can see that these scribed lines here are the outline of where the tube needs to land. And you can see that this one has a clearance notch for where this tube is going to intersect it. So that really just goes to show you the detail of these copes. Normally something like that would be done after the fact and beveled with just with a hand grinder to clearance that. But you don't even need a hand grinder, nothing. Perfect. So everything's ready to weld the roof bars on the underside, and at which point we will then cut the tacks to the floor, remove the boxes, and lower the cage. It's going to give us about 4 inches when we lower the cage, which will be enough clearance to weld all of the tops of the tubes. Once that's done and we put the cage back, the cage is now basically able to be welded in its place, its final resting place, and we can start doing the door bars, the front intrusion bars. We can't really do any of that stuff yet, just because if you had the door bars in place and you went to drop it, I mean, you might be able to do it in this chassis with the door bars, but usually the door bars will give you difficulties in the lowering process, so that's what's up next. So weld everything underneath.
Yeah.
Up here underneath, once you're done the underneath part, I'll give you 5, maybe 10 minutes. Then we're gonna drop her down off the boxes, cut the tacks on the back and stuff.
Yeah.
Then we're gonna finish up welding the tops, put her back.
Call it a day.
Not a day.
Well, a couple days.
So I'll come back in 15 minutes and it should be done.
Okay, what day are we? Tuesday? Come back Thursday, we'll have a chat. Okay, 20 minutes, give me 20 minutes. So we just got the cage all welded up. We did everything we could that we could see while everything was tacked in place. And then we dropped the cage like you guys saw, welded all the rest of it, everything on top that we had to get to. And from here, we're just gonna weld in our main hoop base plates and the rear stay base plates right under here. Just because when the tubes, everything pick back up, it'll be much more difficult to access those areas. So we're gonna do that, and then we'll pick the cage back up, locate the front ones, and then start tacking everything in solid for the last time and fit up. So yeah, just get cranking.
Oh, that was my back. Did you hear that? That was my back. That was the fan. And then once we zip it out, we'll be able to fire this through. Now the tube is 1 3/4, right?
Yeah.
So you can be a bit wider than that. And that is almost a wrap on this 1970 510 Datsun. I say almost because we just need to finish the taco gussets, which after texting Mr. Parson, he's just gonna draw them up for us, and then we're gonna CNC cut them on our water jet here. Do the wrap around and throw them on. They're very simple. For an FIA roll cage, they're required on basically any intersection point. So the FIA bar, we need a taco gusset here and here. We need 2 on the door bars there, and then we need them on the main hoop here. And that's basically 16 gauge wrapped around with a full weld. What that does is give you a large surface area of weld for any intersecting joint, and it gives that particular joint basically 0 chance in any form of failure where you're just depending on a weld, because there is so much weld there. It's basically impossible, given what this car is going to be used for, that joint will fail. So that's what the purpose of those taco gussets are. But let's look at this kind of up close and in detail. We've got our strut tower braces welded in, as well as the intrusion bars with 2 tubes going to the tower, welded in place. We had to do some interesting cuts through the firewalls so the tubes could land at their junction point here, which is really, when you look at it, it's like you're just gonna say that's not going anywhere, just because there's basically 4 tubes. I mean, this one going through and then all the other ones going to the same point. This is a crazy strong junction point. This is incredibly strong here as well. This is incredibly strong here as well, and that's because the A-pillars have the highest chance of deforming during a rollover. You're most likely gonna land on this front corner, and without this FIA bar, that is going to be a compression point of the roll cage. But because Rally has that high chance of rolling over, that's why this is required. In drifting, it's not required because rolling over is few and far between, super rare, and it's usually fairly slow. So Rally's crazy. You got trees, you're doing 150 kilometers an hour plus, rough terrain, super slippery, you can understeer at any point. So that's why these are so well designed and well built. And just kudos to Cage Kits. This would be considered an ultra tight cage, and it was in fact an ultra tight cage, because if you take a look, everything was basically tap into place. What I mean by that is this forehead bar, putting it into place requires you to tap it into place with the hammer because the fit is that perfect. This tube was majorly a tap into place. We actually had to hydraulically push the tubes slightly further away to get this to fall into place. And then once it was in place, it was perfect. Everything was just such a good fit. It speaks volume about their precision in their tolerances with their tube bender, with their laser notcher. None of these notches had to be addressed or cleaned up or changed in any way with the grinder. The only thing we did was maybe knock off the corners of the notch wherever it may have interfered with a weld on another tube, because we would weld the tube and then fit the other one over it. And sometimes the points just hit the weld. That was literally it. Like, the whole thing was flawless. And coming from somebody that's built well over 100 roll cages, this is as good as it gets. I could confidently say I would install any one of these cages and it meets my standard easily meets it. And the cost and everything of it is just so reasonable that I still think you need to have a decent understanding of fabrication. You still need to have decent tools because you obviously have to prep the chassis and remove paint and stuff. This one was sandblasted, but usually there would be seam sealer, paint, sound deadening, whatever. So all that stuff, you're still gonna need decent skills, but other than that, you really don't need to notch or do anything, or notch or bending would be the two expensive components to building a roll cage, and you definitely don't need to do either one of those. So taking a glance at another person, Mr. Cam, behind the welder. I welded some stuff in here, but really not much. It was minimal, like some of the back stuff. But once the cage was good to weld, Mr. Cam got behind the gun and did a phenomenal job. Again, he meets my standards as well. That's why he's the one doing it. But overall, it is just a really impressive kit. And we were able to 3D scan it, like you guys know, send it to Rob, and he's able to give us a product like this right off the bat, first try. Really impressive. I hope you enjoyed the video. And yeah, this is my review. 10 out of 10, maybe 11 out of 10. I couldn't have told him to do anything differently, other than give me the taco gussets, but he's just gonna give us the file, we'll blast it out, and everything's good to go. So this cage is gonna be off to, I think he's racing it over in Africa. Maybe not, maybe he's flying it somewhere else, but this customer goes all over the world with these cars, and I've built several for him. Thankfully, he's even done the liberty of testing it out for us by crashing it into a ravine. So I'm really glad that he's coming back to us all the time, and I'm glad that I wasn't able to really spare the time to build these cages anymore, but now that we were able to collaborate with Cage Kits, it is now become possible again for me to stay in this market. That's it for today's video. Thanks for checking it out. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you guys on the next one, where we're probably doing something with the Corvette. So see you guys.